Karma is real. I never believed in it before, but now I do. I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story, but life has a way of throwing unexpected twists. My name is Daniel. I'm 28. And if you looked at me today, you'd see a man who has built his own life, strong and independent. But the road to get here? It was filled with pain, betrayal, and loneliness. It all started the day I was born. My mother, a woman I never had the chance to know, died giving birth to me. From that moment on, I was marked. Not by choice, not by action, but simply by existing. My father never forgave me for that. Growing up, my house felt more like a shrine than a home. My mother's clothes still hung in the closet. Her books still lined the shelves, untouched. Her photos were everywhere. She was there, but not in, the way I needed her to be. And my father? He was there too, physically. But emotionally, he might as well have been on another planet. He did the bare minimum. I was fed, clothed, and sent to school, but love, warmth, a simple pat on the back? None of that existed. He barely spoke to me unless it was to criticize, unless it was to remind me that I wasn't enough. And then there was Jake. Jake was my cousin, but to my father, he was more than that. When Jake's dad, my uncle, died in a car accident, my father took him in like a second son. Except Jake wasn't the second son. He was the only son in my father's eyes. I still remember the day it all changed. The phone rang. My dad answered, and I watched his face crumble. It was the only time in my life I ever saw my father cry after that Jake became everything to him. At first, I was excited. Maybe, just maybe, having another kid around would bring my dad out of his shell. Maybe it would make things better between us. But I was wrong. So very wrong. Instead of bringing us closer, Jake pushed me even further into the shadows. Why can't you be more like Jake? Those words were the soundtrack of my childhood. If Jake did something, it was amazing. If I did something, it didn't matter. Jake was everything I wasn't. He was athletic, charming, the life of the party. Meanwhile, I liked books. I was shy. I wasn't the kind of son my dad wanted. I worked so hard to earn his approval. I studied harder. I even joined sports teams, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd see me. But he never did. One moment I'll never forget. When I was 12, I entered a science fair. I built a working model of the solar system, complete with moving planets. I stayed up late every night, pouring my heart into it. And I won. First place. I came home, beaming with pride, holding my trophy. I walked into the living room ready to tell my dad. He was there laughing with Jake about a football game. "Dad, I won first place in the science fair." He barely looked up. "That's nice." Then he went back to talking to Jake. That was the first time I truly felt invisible. It only got worse as we got older. In high school, I did better academically, but my dad always found a way to downplay it. "Grades aren't everything," he'd say. "Jake's got more important things to focus on." At a parent-teacher conference, my English teacher told my dad that my writing was some of the best she had ever seen. She said I had real talent. His response? Will that help him get a sports scholarship? I sat there, humiliated. I kept chasing his approval. I kept hoping something would change, but nothing did. And then came the final betrayal. I worked my ass off in school. I got into a good university. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was solid. I was ready to build my future. I knew money would be tight, but I hoped my dad would help at least a little. And then one day, I overheard a phone call. "I'll cover all your tuition, Jake. Don't worry about it." My blood ran cold. When I asked if he could help me too, he looked at me like I was insane. "Jake needs it more. I can't afford to pay for both of you." And just like that, my college dreams were gone. I tried. I got a job at a diner. I applied for scholarships. I worked nights, weekends, whatever it took. But it wasn't enough. After one semester, I had to drop out. Meanwhile, Jake was living it up at a prestigious university, all funded by my father. The final straw was when I saw him post pictures of his new dorm, his spring break trips, his brand new laptop, bought by my father. That was the moment I packed my bags. I walked out. I remember standing outside my dad's house that night, my bag slung over my shoulder, my hands shaking. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was the crushing weight of realization. I was on my own now. At first, I told myself it wouldn't be so bad. I had some savings, I'd find work, I'd figure it out, but reality hit fast. I rented a tiny studio apartment in the worst part of town, the kind of place where you double-check the locks 3 times before sleeping. It smelled like cigarette smoke and old beer, but it was mine. I worked wherever I could. In the mornings, I cleaned offices. In the evenings, I waited tables. At night, I took shifts at a gas station. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. There were nights I sat in that tiny apartment, eating cheap ramen, exhausted to the bone, wondering if I'd made a mistake. If I should have swallowed my pride and stayed home. But then I'd remember the way my father looked at me when I asked for help. Like I was nothing. And that kept me going. I didn't just survive. I learned. I learned how to fix a leaky sink. How to stretch $20 to last a whole week. How to rely on myself. And slowly, things got better. I got promoted at the bookstore where I worked part-time. I saved enough money to enroll in community college classes at night. I made friends. Real. Friends. People who saw me, not some comparison to Jake. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something of my own. And then, out of nowhere, my past came knocking. The call came on a random Tuesday afternoon, an unknown number. I picked up. And then, I heard his voice. Daniel? I froze. It had been 3 years. 3 years of silence. 3 years of learning to live without him. At first, he made small talk, asking how I was, how life was treating me. His voice sounded different, older, tired, desperate. And then he got to the point. He needed money. A lot of money. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. This was the same man who refused to give me a single dime for college, who threw everything he had into Jake. Now he was coming to me for help? I asked the obvious question. Why not ask Jake? Silence. Then a bitter laugh. Jake can't help right now. I almost laughed too. Years of being compared to him. Years of being treated like I wasn't good enough, and now suddenly I was the one being relied on? I told him no. There was a long pause. Then, for the first time in my life, I heard something I never expected from him. Regret. He admitted it. He admitted he had been unfair, that he had been blinded by grief, that he had made mistakes. I just want to fix things, he said. I know I can't change the past, but I cut him off. It's too late, Dad. And I hung up. For the first time ever, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. The days after that call were strange. A part of me kept replaying it. Should I have listened longer? Should I have given him another chance? But then I'd remember all the times I needed him. And he wasn't there. My high school graduation. My first heartbreak. The nights I cried myself to sleep, wishing just once he would say he was proud of me. He wasn't there for me, so why should I be there for him? I sent him a text. One final message. I hope you finally see what your choices led to. I don't hate you, but I don't owe you anything. His reply came hours later, a long message filled with apologies. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned off my phone, grabbed my keys, and went to meet my friends, because they were my real family. As we sat around the table that night, laughing over a dumb inside joke, I realized something. I wasn't the broken kid desperately seeking love anymore. I was free.